Our first reader tonight is Catherine Pond. Catherine Pond was born in New York City and grew up in Georgia. Her debut collection, Fieldglass, is the winner of the Crab Orchard First Book Prize. Her poems have appeared in Best New Poets, Best American Nonrequired Reading, AGNI, Salmagundi, The Adroit Journal, Narrative, and other publications. Pond is a PhD candidate in literature and creative writing at the University of Southern California, where she teaches writing. She received a BA from Skidmore College and an MFA from Columbia University School of the Arts. For 9 summers, she worked at the New York State Summer Writers Institute as a student assistant and later as an assistant director. Please join me in welcoming Catherine Pond.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here reading alongside Allison and Patricia. It's like beyond an honor. If you don't already have their most recent books, I hope you'll get those. And I'm happy and excited to read to you today from my first book of poems ever published by Southern Illinois University Press, and was the winner of the Crab Orchard First Book Prize, which it was my sincere honor to accept from John Tribble and Allison Joseph. So this is the book. I'm so proud to be, in association with both Crab Orchard and the Southern Illinois University Press. I thought I'd read just from one section, so I'll read sort of 5 poems that are in sequence in the book. So hopefully they sort of fall nicely together in terms of a reading order. And then if there's time, I'll read one new poem that's quite short. So we'll see how it goes. Arrival. I guess I should just say this sequence of poems is about, it sort of comes from my childhood and an experience in childhood that sort of shaped me as a person and also as a writer. And it talks a lot about a friendship I have with my best friend who's still in my life today and is also a poet. Arrival. I was so dumb. I thought your suffering was something I could solve or at least push out of sight, like the dead falcon we found in the forest and carried back home under steel blue night to bury. I thought death was a story we'd tell ourselves later and laugh. Instead, you stopped sharing things with me, except the poems, which I didn't even know you'd been writing. I was your only reader. That summer in the high peaks, your drafts piled up on the picnic table under a paperweight, edges shimmering in the wind like long silver wings. You were newly 13. I was halfway through 11. I began to write back. I thought we could live together this way, side by side, not speaking, watching ink run like waves across the page. How could we have known what the water would do, that the depth pressure would pull us apart, that time would come toward us, soundless, amorphous, that love is an agony we enter alone. This next poem is called Grief. The ugliness was beginning. Those days I was already drinking, and you did not like to be touched. The thing is, I was happy. Sometimes light washed the side of your face in a glow. There was a cathedral, I remember, and a river where you rode, where the trees bent to touch the water and a mist spread thin across the surface. In the mornings, I'd go down to the shore and watch you glide out in the chill, past the split oak, toward the gray, tremulous center. This next poem is called Winter Sister. The day your brother dies, I undress, bury the clothes I'm wearing in the trash, a long sleeve striped shirt and a pair of jeans. It's October. I don't know how you feel, what you throw out. The lake falls back into itself like a first draft. You start sleeping on the floor. When I spend the night, I join you, the two of us cocooned in comforters. All night I listen for your breath from beneath the blue-gray chrysalis. At home, my mom starts reading to me in the evening again. She has a clear voice like water. I'm getting too old for it, but each night she saves a space for me in bed beside her. Time behaves strangely, moving forward and away. Magnolias bloom like ink blots in the yard. Drought turns the willow yellow in the wind. Somewhere what you love is still alive, turning cartwheels in a gentle snow, is the kind of lie I write years later, wishing I could make it true for you. Winter's sister, 17 years of sleeping on floors. We live so far apart, but I still wake searching for your shape in the dark. And you still call me in your quiet voice, waiting and waiting for what won't come home. I think I'll read two more and then, so this one's a little long and then there's a short one. Dream Elegy. We don't speak. I climb into his truck as if guided by an invisible hand, as if we've known each other our whole lives, and we have. The rain picks up as we drive, and the street signs change color, then shape. When we reach the turnoff, the road is light gray, almost translucent, like a worn out piece of paper. He leads me up the concrete steps and into the house. I take it all in, the paint-wrecked furniture, the slurry for casting, sand melted down in a fluidized bed, shelves lined with bronze objects, backyard overrun with scrap metal and half-finished sculptures. And electricity moves between us, as if time were a map that's been leading me back to this town made peaceful by rain, and all those years without him seem like a joke, bruised and piled together like plums in a bowl. Outside, he throws open the garage to show me his father's Corvette, which he's kept in good condition. It sparkles like a forest, the rearview mirrors like miniature lakes. I remember our long rides through wealthy neighborhoods, how his dad let me and Anna hang off the back of the convertible and slide around turns, the mansions boring compared to the bounce and burn of the speeding car. Hop in, he says, and I do. I feel safe with him, whooshing along the back roads, the secret of our childhood a rope between us, so when we stop at the cemetery and get out to walk, I stay close at his side. What is it like, I ask him finally, when we reach the headstone with his name on it. Lilies have grown up around the grave, and he picks one and puts it in my hair. It's quiet, he says. His hand is huge on top of mine. His loneliness moves through my body like a pulse, and I can't remember whether it was prescription pills or heroin, suicide or an accident. It doesn't matter anymore. In this version, he's alive. We have our whole lives ahead of us. And this last poem is called University of Iowa Museum of Natural History. I did not get my MFA at Iowa, but my best friend did. And while I was visiting her there, I heard a few different times of this prompt to try to get a sloth that's in the Natural History Museum in Iowa City into a poem. So I guess this is a thing that maybe some Iowans try to do in their poems in the MFA. So I'm a little bit of a fraud because I didn't do the MFA there, but this is called University of Iowa Museum of Natural History, and there is a visitation from a sloth in the poem. So, under a replica of a mammoth sloth, you placed my hand on your stomach and I feel the baby kick. I look at a diorama of the Canadian prairie, imagine a tornado sweeping across the cardboard empire, shaking the figurines loose from their toothpick fence. We don't speak. The museum of tomorrow is small, and we are scared of the surgical knife that will slice through your abdomen. To exit, we walk backward through the Devonian era, where the world is mostly water, and you get tired quickly. Here, the fish are still just forming, the first forests taking shape. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for that absolutely beautiful reading. The next reader tonight is Allison Joseph. Allison Joseph's latest full-length book of poetry, Confessions of a Bare-Faced Woman, was published by Red Hen Press in 2018. Confessions of a Bare-Faced Woman was chosen as the gold/first place winner in the poetry category of the 2019 Feathered Quill Book Awards. It was also nominated in the poetry category of the NAACP Image Awards, and was a 2019 finalist for both the Montaigne Medal and the Da Vinci Eye Book Award, sponsored by the Eric Hoffer Book Awards. Her other books and chapbooks include What Keeps Us Here, Soul Train, In Every Scene, Worldly Pleasures, Imitation of Life, Voice, Poems, My Father's Kites, Trace Particles, Little Epiphanies, Mercurial, Mortal Rewards, Multitudes, The Purpose of Hands, Double Identity, Corporal News, and What Once You Loved. She was the literary partner and wife of the late poet and editor John Tribble. Allison Joseph lives in Carbondale, Illinois, where she directs the MFA program in creative writing at Southern Illinois University. She serves as a poetry editor of Crab Orchard Review, the publisher of No Chair Press, and the director of Writers in Common, a writing conference for writers of all ages and experience levels. In 2014, she was awarded a Doctor of Letters honorary degree from her undergraduate alma mater, CUNY College. Please join me in welcoming Allison Joseph.
Hello, everyone. So wonderful to hear you, Catherine, and hear the poems that I hope to choose come into this world. And my reading tonight is dedicated to the spirit of John Tribble, who touched everyone who is reading tonight. Catherine's book, but also Patricia Spears Jones. John had a wonderful relationship because the two of them were Arkansans and proud of it. So I'm going to begin with a poem of John's about John's mother, who at the age of 92 passed away on September 9th. And they had a very strong mother-son relationship, and she was very proud that he was a poet, and she appears in many of his poems. And this poem that I'm going to read, the day after I got the news that she had passed away, I went in and taught this poem because I was teaching list poetry in my class. And this is a poem where John's mother is the central subject, but it's a childhood version of John's mother. And she was very much a product of the Depression. Well, when you die at 92, that's what's going to happen. You're going to be a product of the Depression. So she was what we would consider poor, but she was rich in the things that she collected in a secret jewelry box. And she called these things play pretties. And that's the title of this poem. Play pretties. Cast off jewelry box of cardboard and velvet my mother filled with a 7-tooth whalebone comb. 5 red, green, yellow, blue, white Aggies. 3 mercury dimes. A lava rock her oldest brother said washed up on the shore in Honolulu. 2 broken dollhouse curio mirrors from a rummage sale. A polished brass whistle on a blue cord. A silver ribbon from Christmas. A pink ribbon from her 6th birthday. A black and gold ring with an anchor inset on the ebony stone. A small photo of Clark Gable clipped from a local paper. A bigger photo of Shirley Temple from Life. A rabbit's foot. A chipped cameo. 2 shriveled buckeyes. And a yellowing photo of her father posing with a walking cane on a sunny afternoon before she could remember losing him. That comes from John's first book, Natural State, which was published by Glassliar Press, and it's still available. During his lifetime, he published 3 books, 2 of them with Glassliar. So I've been working fitfully because it's so hard to figure out the elegy. I've been working fitfully on a collection about the experience of losing John and the experience of just losing someone you care for. John's death was unanticipated, and I didn't expect to lose him at 56. We just passed the 2-year anniversary of him leaving this plane of existence. And the first poems I wrote were so raw that I wondered, will anyone want to read this? I mean, will anyone relate to this? And I wrote this one and it got snapped up for an anthology. So I thought, well, maybe there are people who want to read poems that testify to that kind of hurt. So this is called Spell to Bring a Dead Husband Back, and it appears in an anthology called The Language of Loss, which is a recently published anthology. Okay, I got to breathe in to do this one. I got it on my screen. Spell to bring a dead husband back. Come back to me and fetch your busted heart. Come back to me and take the medications the doctors said would make you well. Come back to me and save me from this guilt over not saving you. Come back to me and call your mother. She's lonely for the sound of your voice. Come back to me and read me your poems. I can read them, but it's better if you read them because you wrote them and I'm only a spectator. Come back to me and take your place in this bed that I filled with books and clothes and condolence cards, as if their weight could replicate yours, their heft not resembling the bones and body I slept beside. Come back to me and fight me for the remote. Come back, let me feed you. Come back, let me rub your sore shoulder with CBD in the hope it would loosen and you could start another day, put on another blue shirt from your closet of blue shirts. Come back, come back, come back with your glasses precariously on your nose. You'd push them back with fingers you called stubby. Come back and find your wedding ring, your pocket change, your heavy fist of office keys, your money under the welcome mat, your pens in a secret drawer. Come back, come back, come back, I say as I rock my body into that cursed sleep. Come back through the flames and the urns, the platitudes and the eulogies. Come back and we will all the pleasures prove, stopping the clocks and the calendars. Come back, come back, come back, damn it, come back. So that is sort of an example of what first poured out of me after it happened. And then I started writing poems in form. Those of you who know me know that I like writing poems in forms. It's not any sort of crusade on my part. It just helps me. So this is a villanelle, and it appeared in Dustin Brookshire's magazine Limp Wrist that just did a whole issue on villanelles. And this is called Live to Tell. Live to tell. You keep your secrets, keep them well, locked down like any safe deposit box. A widow knows, but never tells. The art of losing feels like hell. no matter if you've changed the locks. You keep your secrets, keep them well, discoveries that swell and swell as time unmoored denies all clocks. A widow knows but never tells of solace in a fainting spell, about how loudly her heart knocks. You keep your secrets, keep them well, and no one drug will ever quell the sadness you go down throat blocked. A widow knows, but seldom tells. You think of him, how hard he fell. You wish he could just rise and walk. I keep his secrets, I keep them well. This widow knows, won't live to tell. So I'm going to read a few poems from Lexicon, which is the follow-up book to Confessions of a Barefaced Woman, also from Red Hen Press. And strangely enough, there are lots of poems about grief and grieving in this book, except I was thinking of my mother, who was an immigrant to 3 different countries. She was born in Jamaica. She moved from Jamaica to England. She was part of the Windrush generation. She moved from England. Well, I was born there. My sister was born there. I was born there. We moved as a family from England to Canada, to Toronto. And we moved from Toronto to the United States when I was about 4, to the Bronx, New York, which is what I always claim as my hometown. I didn't find out until after the things that you find out after both of your parents are gone. I didn't find out until after that. When we came to the States, it was just me, my mother, and my sister, because my father had cheated on my mother. So my mother decided, I'll just take my children and move to a new country. See how he deals with that. And the phenomenon, I was talking in class today about we were moving into persona poems, and we're talking about the phenomenon of, in fairy tales, how many people, fairy tale characters have dead mothers. So this is a poem called Dead Mothers. Dead mothers. They don't let go of us because they're dead, nor can we let them go. All they have is us, our hazy minds, our memories revising how they spoke and walked, what they wore, who they'd nag, ignore. All they have is what we knew of them, what they wore, who they'd nag, ignore. We fail them every day that we're alive, revising how they spoke and walked, us across the street, the finger's grip, the palm, the cautionary voice of no and stop that tugged us back and out of traffic's harm. Revising how they spoke and walked, we get their gestures wrong. The faults in us is us, our hazy minds, our memories, our mouths misquoting them. What's left is us, our hazy minds, our memories, our hands that cannot recreate their hands. Nor can we let them go, all we have bound up with how they left and why, where they breathed their last, hospital or desk or twisted car. Nor can we let them go. All they have and were remains in us, transformed or not. They don't let go of us because they're dead. So I'm going to end with a poem that harkens back to the beginning of John and Allison, or as we like to call it, Team Jallison. That was our couple name. And John and I, where else does a young man from Little Rock, Arkansas meet a girl from the Bronx, New York, but Bloomington, Indiana? Of course, that's everybody knows that. So we met in MFA school. and we got married in Bloomington. And we had probably some people would think it was the worst wedding ever. But we got married by the city clerk's office, and we had showed up one afternoon, and we had thought, like in the movies, everybody gets married by the justice of the peace. And we tried. It was the end of a year, end of December, and all the justices of the peaces were booked. I had this mistaken idea, like from all the movies and TV shows, that you just show up and they're like, okay, we now pronounce you man and wife. But we were told that the city clerk can marry you. So the city clerk saw us and said, okay, come back on this date and I'll marry you. We came back on that date, the city clerk was out sick. So the assistant city clerk married us, had to go find a robe, had her sneakers sticking out underneath it. So this is an account of that day, and it's called Ordinary Dress. And thank you for listening, and thank you for making me a part of this wonderful reading. Ordinary Dress. I never cared for wedding gowns. Got married in purple and black. A dress with black buttons up and down. It hangs in my closet still, stuck in the back. Got married in purple with a black collar, long sleeves, hem right at my knee. It hangs in my closet still, stuck in the back. It's too tight now, too small for me. Collar, long sleeves, hem at my knee, cloth too thin for Indiana winter, December. It's too tight now, too small for me. All I can do is remember. Cloth too thin for Indiana winter, December. Wind whipped it open. I had to pin it shut. All I can do is remember my sheer stockings and my trembling. When wind whipped it open, I had to pin it shut with a borrowed safety pin. My sheer stockings and my trembling made no difference to my future husband. Held together with a borrowed safety pin, I said vows I've since forgotten. Made no difference to my husband, who cares little about how fat I've gotten. I said vows I've since forgotten. Keep a dress with black buttons up and down. Don't care about how fat I've gotten. I'll never wear a wedding gown. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much, Allison, for that incredibly moving reading. Next, it is my honor to introduce Patricia Spears Jones, with whom I had the pleasure of studying poetry at Barnard College. Patricia Spears Jones is a poet, writer, playwright, cultural critic, and winner of the 2017 Jackson Poetry Prize from Poets and Writers. She is the author of A Lucent Fire, New and Selected Poems, published by White Pines Press in 2015, which was the finalist for the PSA's William Carlos Williams Prize and the Paterson Poetry Prize, and featured a Pushcart Prize winning poem. She has 10 additional publications, poetry books, chapbooks, and in anthologies such as Of Poetry and Protest, From Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin, Facts, Best American Experimental Writing 2016, 2017 Pushcart Prize, Best of Small Presses, Truth to Power, Writers Respond to the Rhetoric of Hate and Fear, and Angles of Ascent, a Norton anthology of contemporary African-American poetry. She has received grants and awards from NISCA, NEA, the Foundation for Contemporary Art, and the BAU Institute for Residency at Camargo Foundation in France. She has been a fellow at Robert Rauschenberg Residency and at VCCA, Yaddo, and the Millay Colony. She's also a recipient of the Goethe Institute grant for travel in Germany. She's taught at Barnard College, CUNY College, including Hunter College and Queens College, and Adelphi University. She's been on faculty for summer programs at Fine Arts Work Center, Community of Writers, Naropa University, and University of Rhode Island. She has led workshops at Poets House, the Poetry Project at St. Mark's Church, and she curated Word Sunday at Calabar Imports featuring Brooklyn-based poets. She's a Black Earth Institute Senior Fellow, Emeritus, and organizer of American Poets Congress. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Spears Jones.
Hello. Hi. Oh my goodness. I do look good. Okay. Allison told me that. Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Catherine. And finally, I get to read with Allison Joseph. This has been a big thing I wanted to do for years. And I kept waiting and waiting to come back to Carbondale, you know, and do that. And the wonderful folks at Carbondale brought me, along with some wonderful poets, to the Devil's Kitchen. Was it Devil's Kitchen? Yes. Festival 1,000 years ago. And I think my book hadn't even come out yet. And it was just amazing. So I know that Carbondale is in the middle of an interesting area in Illinois. Very interesting. Boy. And that John and Allison were able to create a really powerful and generous space for writing and for literature is a miracle, frankly. Just any place where writers can do that, whether it's at a university or an independent space, given these times, it must be applauded. So I want to thank Jennifer and Sophia, my former student. Sophia, like every week she came to Boston. Anyway, she was great, and now she's here and she's doing such a wonderful job. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, all the people at Hudson Valley Writers Center. I want to dedicate this reading to Brenda Connor Bay, who left us way too soon several years ago, but who was one of the first people to bring me to Hudson Valley Writers Center years ago, and then also in the memory of Robert Hirschon. So I'm going to read from A Lucent Fire, and then I'm going to read from a new manuscript, which I hope will be coming out in 2023. Keep your fingers crossed. What the God of Fire charged me. Pagué de lo el Dios de Fuego me cabró. Ana Ilse. Ana Ilse is a Nicaraguan poet. Each turn is the one that mocks the old order. And when the revolution happens, another readies itself, like the surge of blood in spring or the lost hope of a winter where kisses were too few or too many. You will say, she's romantic, and you will be correct. But one dimension is only one dimension. The others remain unseen. Be wary. When the night watch ends and the sun rises, a smile on land and water, I worry less about the dreams I cannot suppress, but more about the life I am so willing to live. One turn, then the other, a fire walk as prelude, a dance best forgiven. And that was from The Weather That Kills. All right. This is the fun part about having a new and select, these are the selected. Ghost, the only poem of mine that ever made it into Best American Poetry. Thank you, Rita Dove. Ghost. And it was originally published in Crab Orchard Review. Yay! Okay. He was filled with beauty, so filled he could not stop the shadows from their walk around his horn, blasting cobwebs in the Fillmore ceiling. Somewhere dawn makes up for the night before, but he is floating dead in the water. And yet, my lover tells me, he saw him shimmering, as did others. It could have been the acid or fragmented harmonics, his reed ancestral, this perilous knowledge. The band went home shivering. A girl threw roses in the water, carnations, daisies, and bright red sashes, like ones the Chinese use for funeral banners. A drummer intoned chants from the Orient. Police wrote up the news. Years later, my lover told me friends would hear the whisper, then a tone, full throttle from the wind, ghost on 2nd Avenue, jasmine in the falling stars. If you catch one, your hands will glitter. And that was for Albert Eiler. Okay. Moving right along, 135. So I was reading Allison stuff, and I thought she was going to do this, but she didn't, because she has all these great Aphraxis. I can never say that word. Aphraxis poems. But this is mine, and this is for Carol Walker. The only time I really liked a Carol Walker show. Carol Walker draws the blues. Also, it has genitalia in mentioning things. Just be ready. Carol Walker draws the blues. There are big lips and fellatio, that old black and white lynch rope and a music stand, guitar and feet do your stuff, radiating gestures of chalk and dread. One humpback whale song of dismemberment, resilience as trace and consequences, pedestals crumbling, hellhounds round the bend, yellow gals rolling across the whorehouse floor, a gallery of dead artist bobbleheads, mute. Cunnilingus says afterthought, virgin's blood, salt and soul, soil dark and dying, cotton's soft center plucked from its cutting bowl, blood's drumbeat, deviators, Jim Crow howling, make a way, make a way, make a way, Dixieland. Some joy, banjo, guitar, colored voice, swamp creatures, divination, crack shuffle, mocking the white man's brand of smoking, rope empty. That. And this is for Grace Wing. Okay, 159. I did this. I can't believe I did this. I feel like a rock and roll star. I have my own playlist. All right. This is dedicated to and is after a comment from Grace Wing Young Toy, a wonderful Chinese American writer, and we became Facebook friends. And this is from Living in the Love Economy. Facebook profile moment, God in Chinese. Grace changes her profile from cartoon Grace to an ideograph, simple, bold, simple. God in Chinese, she says, it was a difficult weekend. Serenity, power, health, talisman in silk, ivory, gold. Or wood, the earth claimed in figures small enough to handle or throw on the floor. I have my ceramic frogs, seashells, a broken plaster angel, each a token of grace, found in places far from home. Now they are home. Holding space in August air, expectant as warriors. Who will they fight? Where harm will not befall them? God in Chinese on the computer screen. Life in the waiting storm swirl. And the next poems are from a book I'm working on called The Beloved Community. And most of these poems have been published in different places. Poverty was in a wonderful journal from the University of Rhode Island. Poverty is a broken tooth, no smile, is bone poorly reset, weak limbs, medicos varios, the fear of speaking unless spoken to, fine translation skills, a dollar means, a late bus is, an opportunity falters at the sight of cracked tooth. Who are you is really, why did you come here? American geology is harrowing, and unlikely loveliness grows in cracks beside the crack house, and children eat a sweet cheapness left in the wake of marvelous dope dreams, perfect for rot. Milk ice. And this is dedicated to David Rivard, who had a thing on Facebook where he talked about driving through ice storm. And anyway, milk ice comes from that. Driving through fog and storm's aftermath, milk ice on leaves. From what breast come this milk? Swelling are tectonic shifts, plunging the snow's volume until a villa is covered from first floor to roof, 30 people left in an exquisite tomb. All that white, no present magic, but shamans once roamed these peaks and danced the valleys in fur and branches, listening for those slow shifts. Before the milk ice radiant and a crystalline water packs the peaks, the heaviest of breast. The plows plot a path away from danger, the road clear, vehicles move sloth-like around the curves descending, and we hum what could become lullaby. Fogged drive, burst of sun, then tree leaves, heavy with milk ice, a day's nurture. Nia was one of the poems of mine that was published in the New Yorker, and I'm grateful for this because this was about the young woman who was murdered in Oakland, uh, by a white crazy man. Nia. It sounds better in Spanish. Precario, prettier, as if it isn't what it is, and there's that O. My, how will the rent get paid? The deadline met, and who ghosted me first, Valley Lover or that other one? Delicacy of skin, quick steps, quick stops, and the direction is what? There's nowhere there, and the last shift is the one where tongues load a stack of sighs, bridge tall and mythic. This day and the next, volcanic shards roll toward the door, even if mountains are in the far distant thousands of miles. How the heart steadily beats as sirens careen and angry men launch their best lives ever by taking so many others. It is a miracle, this heart steadily beating even as the next question threatens a late spring storm, ground broken by lightning, the raindrops rhythmic patter, honors percussionist, those that beat, beat, beat their instruments with a purpose, Nia, knowing how one offbeat collapses the genesis, augurs harsher storms, where the purpose become precarious, where death enters white-armed, white-throated, where the body drops like lightning on rain-moist ground. The beloved community. As most of you guys know, I live in Brooklyn, and for some reason, the laundromats have become a place where I seem to find a lot of story. And it also is a reminder that Allison just read about people very close to her and losing them, but sometimes you just see people daily and you lose them too. The beloved community. The Bangladeshi man walks slowly, so slowly. I know he is ill. He shuffles a broom about the laundromat, then sits in the front of the largest dryer. Then a Latina comes in, frantic, pointing at the flyer posted on the laundromat's window. What happened? She asks. The attendant says, she died. But when? How? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks, he says. He knows only this. Dead 2 weeks. The memorial is for later in the day, in a place far from Halsey. The flyer's crisp image of a Black woman's face, smiling, young-looking, but she was not young. 2 weeks. La Senora shakes her head, her purple-streaked hair tamed by sadness. She always said hello. She was always smiling. She says this to me. I nod and try to smile with her memory. She looks once again at the image, black and white, utilitarian on the glass surface, then walks out onto the sidewalk, undone by new grief. On the death of Claribel Alegria. And I wrote this when I was at the Rauschenberg Residency. She had just died, and I remember how amazing she was. On earth, she marked her days with rage and love, and fought the generals and their army of thieves and torturers. Her pen was mighty, so also their arms. Death is the shadow twin, the one remaining in the foothills by the back door in a convent off a mountainside. And yet a mother's breast awaits her infant's mouth. A rooster crows and children gather what food there is, while bells ring across the foothills when the soldiers leave, a music of hope even as another child is buried, and a landmine erupts a few kilometers from hospital. We live in a time of suffering in places of beauty, where the water and air meet in mountains dark soiled. Food grows so effortlessly, and so does greed. We live in a time of suffering in places of beauty, where yesterday's rebel is today's president, and greed cowers the hurt children who hunger not only for their mother's milk, but a safe place where peace storms the land with smiles and the tender removal of all aspects of war. A phantasm of peace, a peace unlike the other ones, negotiated and then neglected, thus military rifles, handguns, machetes, Bowie knives, unexploded landmines, all made so that peace will end and terror return. What you hear is the sea. The heavy waves come in, go out. Stars pattern Orion's belt, or is that his heel? And then another woman of letters departs. Will she step on Orion's belt? Would she say, "Excuse me, I did not see your heel"? Would she try to hide her era as her celestial garments drag across the night sky? What if Orion could speak? And if he did, would he say, "Oh, the poets love my heel or my belt. You're not the first to seek anchor here"? And the last poem is dedicated to Robert Hirshon. And I know a lot of people here knew him because they may have been first published by Hanging Loose Press, or they learned how to make their first books at the Print Center. He was, along with so many other people I met when I first came to New York, a man of great integrity, creativity, and kindness. And we need more of those people on this planet. March 21st, 2021. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. This is a very emotional reading. I didn't think it was going to be so emotional. March 21st, 2021. You see the moon rise, the sky is pearl blue, and you remember it is Pedro Pietri's birthday, and J.S. Bach both played their organs with intentional glamour, as if there was no one else who could walk a poem or offer up that rumbling sacred welcome. The melodies soar and drop, drop and soar. Like the moon's sliced face, the wind has turned and tuned its brazen soundings. Then the Mr. Softy truck tinkles that terrible jingle. Oh, spring chilly tenderness. That march of lions and lambs, a march of missteps and dreaming, Lenten sacrifices small, no candy, no pastry, or large, no false speaking, learning to forgive. What an aching sorrow hovers the city. Old men and women shuffle to the corner and back, their spines cascading, as names are flung into Orion's belt. Poets' names, Robert, Adam, another we have not heard. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much for that reading. What an incredible trio of poets we have with us tonight. Thank you so much. We're now going to begin the Q&A portion of the evening, and to help me moderate questions tonight is one of Hudson Valley Writers Center's wonderful instructors, Shira Dentz. If you have any questions for the poets, please do write them in the chat. And I'm just going to spotlight all of our poets together so we can see everyone. Great. So the first question that we have tonight is for all three of you. Lots of our audience members are poetry students, and lots of them are working on their first collections. What advice would you give to those working on a collection of poems for the first time?
Oh. Marry another poet? No, it doesn't have to be that extreme, but say you're a MFA student and you're used to writing for a workshop, and then you graduate with your MFA and you have this manuscript, this thesis manuscript. You're going to need someone who, and John was this person for me, actually more for me than I was for him, who will tell you where to cut, what darlings to kill, what you need to write that isn't there. And you need that person who's going to give it to you straight, even more than you need connections and all of that. You just need someone who's going to read your manuscript and take it very seriously and tell you the truth about it, which sometimes you don't want to hear. You don't necessarily have to marry that person.
Jumping off what Allison said, I would just also add that in general, like, it's so important to have somebody close to you, maybe the closest person in your life, who really understands that for you, poetry is the world, and that is a legitimate world. And in some ways it's the only world. And, you know, they can do other things besides being a poet themselves. But I think that respect for what we do is so important, because a lot of people will want you to be normal or to sort of conform to a more, I don't know, societally acceptable career path, I guess.
I think we lost Patricia Spears Jones, but she just, I think
Pop back in.
Let's see if we can find her and have her unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know what happened, honey. I have no idea. All of a sudden I lost all kind of internet. You know, I live in Brooklyn. Who knows what's happening out there? I'm sure they get great advice, and I'll just go ahead. What's the next question?
Okay, we'll go on to the next question. So Jordan Franklin asks, do you find that your poetic obsessions have changed dramatically since you first started writing poetry?
First of all, hi, Jordan. You're an amazing poet. So everybody go get Jordan's first book. It's out there. My obsessions, there are obsessions that make their way into the writing and obsessions that don't. So the ones that make their way into the writing, for me, remain pretty consistent. Writing about family, writing about love, writing about race, writing about city versus country, urban versus rural, since I've experienced both. And those things have been pretty consistent. The things that don't make it into my poems are things that remain hobbies that John tolerated. He tolerated my jewelry making and my knitting and crocheting and all those things. I don't have things that I exclude deliberately, but there are things that just, I'd never figure out how to write about them, even though I may spend a lot of time on them and they may be a burning passion for a while, but the things that stay.
I guess maybe for me, I have over the last few years written a little bit more about the South than I did earlier as a young poet, because I was encountering the city. But I think I've always sort of written about sort of relationships, but not necessarily, not just, relationships literally between humans and architecture, or all kinds of weird things. I mean, I just am I have that kind of brain, and I have grown to appreciate it a lot more as I get older, because I actually have something to say about those things. I'm not sure, what I was saying when I was much younger, except that I think one of the things I think poets over time either become more fearless or less so. It depends on the poet. I become more fearless. I know that. And hello, Jordan. Jordan was one of my students too, I've taught them all. Except Catherine. I usually only want to. Sophia, Jordan, I don't know who else is on this list, but they're all my students. Okay.
Well, we have a second question from Jordan, which is, do you find that grieving for a person translates differently into poetry compared to grieving for a place? And if so, how?
Asking those easy questions, I see. Grieving for a person on paper is so ungainly and unwieldy that I've written so many elegies for John that some, I don't know if I'll ever even bother to type them up. I always begin in longhand. When I'm elegizing a place, it just feels more ritualistic, like I can remember what the place was, and I can remember what the place became, and I can remember the day that building came down or whatever it is. So it feels like there are steps when memorializing a place, but when it's a person, there's just like mess everywhere, and sometimes literally, like there's the blood that was on the floor when I came back to the Bronx and after my father died, there was literal blood. So that's the difference to me. Your mileage may vary.
I'm curious about what Catherine has to say.
Yeah, I would just say I think longing for a place or elegizing a place is a bit more of like an amorphous grief, or sort of a kind of pulsing grief. But I think that grieving for a person in reality and on the page is incredibly bodily in my experience, which is limited. But I think there is a difference. I think grief for a person is so incredibly consuming and hard to come out from under. And I think grieving for a place is a more distant feeling. And I'm not sure if that's answering the question in terms of how it appears on the page, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm going to be the outlier here. I just don't think of a place as being elegized. I think only of humans as being elegized. So I can't even imagine the idea of elegize. I mean, I can memorialize a place, and I write about place all the time, but I don't think of it as you know, some human being that I have cleaved to and who is no longer there for me to cleave to. It's just, you know, the difference between writing about my mother and maybe writing about, you know, I don't know, the loss, you know, the way the East Village used to be is just not the same thing. And I don't think it even should be equated. So I guess I throw that gauntlet back at Jordan, because I just don't think it should be equated.
Okay, let's go to our next question. And so Emily Kinney asks, do you start with an image and allow a narrative to be born or formed around it? Or do you feel you're aware of what narrative needs to be written? So I guess this goes to, like, do you feel that you usually start with a particular type of seed for a poem? And do you begin with an image? Do you begin with and let the image direct you wherever it's going, or do you start with a narrative most of the time? Because probably nobody does it the same way every time.
And I know Emily wants Catherine's answer on this.
That's
Emily gets to
true, but I was tricky and decided that I would ask all three of you.
I think I write both ways. When I was younger, I definitely would start more with an image more often. And I don't know if that was a product of having sort of less life experience to write about. But I still, you know, and sometimes I do sit down now more conceptually with a poem that I know I'd like to write. I have the sense of it that way. But I still find it very productive to sometimes start with an image and allow myself to learn what the image wants to teach me, where it wants to take me in the poem. And I usually wind up, you know, in a place that feels urgent to me for some reason, even if what I start off describing is, you know, an inanimate object that I don't think has any relation to my current life. So thanks.
I have nothing to say.
We just concur.
No, I don't concur. I have nothing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody's creative process is so complicated and so different. When people ask those kind of questions, it washes over my brain. Like, you know, I'm like, I just don't understand it. I mean, sometimes there's an image, sometimes there's a story, sometimes there's neither of them. Sometimes it's a sound, right? So you know, I mean, it depends on what you're hearing, seeing, smelling, where you are in the world, or what you're reading. So anything can inspire a poem. Anything, even a Mr. Softy. Ugh.
Okay, don't forget to put in your questions, everyone. I'm looking for another one.
Got another one.
Somebody says they love Mr. Softy. Oh my God. No.
I want to ask the three of you what you're reading right now.
Oh my goodness. A lot of books. Because I'm preparing to do the 92nd Street Wide thing. So I've been reading all kinds of different poets' work, just a ton of. I mean, I could send you a picture of the stack. So that might give you an idea. But I do want to say a couple of shout outs. I want to say that over the last few years, I've really appreciated teaching Cheryl Boyce-Taylor's poems. I once, when I was doing the gathering in North Carolina, and you know, everybody except for Jackie Shelton Green was the only other Black person in the room with me. Anyway, so And I read this poem and I said, and it's written in dialect, because she's from the islands and everybody's going like, well, we don't have that. And then somebody finally says, well, wait a minute, the guy down the street talks like this, I could write that, you know what I mean? So people need to start, again, how you hear things, how you hear language becomes really important. And her book, Mama Fight, I'm probably going to misstate it. I just forgot the name of it. Correct name. It's really terrific. I also love Erica Hunt's book, Jump the Clock, which has a number of her older books in it and new poems. So it's almost like a new and selected. And I go back often to Brenda Hillman's most recent book.
So Allison and Catherine, what are you reading these days? Is there any particular art or poetry that you feel like is particularly important right now to you?
I've been having a hard time actually reading books, and I partially I blame that on widow brain, partially I blame that on the pandemic, but the book that snapped me, or at least helped me a little bit out of the darkness, and I read when I became widowed, I read so many books, and this has been the only book that's truly helped me. And I've mentioned this book to a lot of people, but it's called Grief is a Journey, and it's not poetry. It's written by Kenneth J. Doka, who is a gerontology professor. So there wasn't that sort of religious mumbo jumbo that I got in a lot of books, and I'm not distinctly or traditionally religious myself. So this book has helped me. I've been having trouble, just concentrating on, even as much as I love contemporary poetry and fiction, I've just had a lot of trouble just nailing my attention down. My attention wants to drift and just watch endless stupid TV shows.
Me too. And Catherine?
Yeah, I'm reading right now towards a dissertation that I'm writing, so I'm all over the place. I have my desk is kind of piles of books. It's like a complete nightmare. Yeah, like a beautiful nightmare.
I was screaming for everybody. I've been known to do that.
Yeah.
What's your dissertation on?
It's on eco-consciousness in contemporary poetry.
Oh wow, no wonder you got a lot of books.
Yeah.
Oh damn.
One book I read for the first time recently that I'm really I keep returning to and thinking about is it's called Schizophrene by Banu Kapil. I don't know. It's just a beautiful book, and it's sort of written in a sort of prose poem style. And yeah, I could list 100 more and probably wouldn't, but and I'm so sorry. I have to head out. I have a family situation, but I'm so happy to be here today. I want to thank everybody so much for coming. I'm so sorry to leave now, but yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Patricia, and thank you, Allison. Oh my gosh, this was a lovely evening. Thank you, Jennifer.
Catherine, thank you for being here. Good night. We've got some more great questions in the chat. One of them is from Atina Danner, who wants to know what kinds of art and poetry feel essential to you right now.
Whew, that's a hard question.
Yeah, that's like an essay.
That's a really hard question. I had, when the pandemic struck, and meaning March 2020, I happened to be teaching a class on poetry and music. So I had all my students make their pandemic playlists. So there are all these songs on it, like It's the End of the World as We Know It by REM and all these apocalyptic songs. It's like, oh, okay, let's put all the songs that inspire fear in a playlist and let's control our fear that way. I have been listening to nothing. That is the strange thing, which is weird for me because I usually listen to a lot of music, but it's sometimes music is, this is weird from a music fan. Sometimes music is too much and it's painful and it brings back memories. And I think maybe part of it is John himself was an incredible music lover who knew so much about music, and that's almost like touching the third rail sometimes when I listen to music. It's like I can't handle the weight of memory. So sometimes it's just silence that leads to art for me.
I think for me, I understand that. What's really strange is, like, you know, this is New York City is a music town, and a live performance place, and it's very weird to be in a place where it's very difficult to hear live music, except, you know, if somebody's playing in the park, if you're there. I think that whatever art makes you get a sense of the whole, whatever that may be, I think that's essential. I don't really have, you know, and you never know when you're going to encounter it. And sometimes it's something like when you're walking a garden, like gardens are works of art, right? You know, botanical gardens are works of art. You know, my neighbors have like great little pocket gardens here. I am looking forward to, for instance, going to see the Jasper John show at the Whitney. I saw the Dawood Bey's excellent show. If you don't know Dawood Bey's work, he's an African-American photographer. I've known him since the 70s. So literally, I feel like we all grew up together. And his retrospective was powerful, and it was one of the few times when I've been in a museum where I started to cry, because there's a series of portraits he does of high school students called Class Pictures, and there was just one where the commentary just hit my heart, and so there, you know, but you're only going to find that if you go out and see what's there, and leave your expectations at the doorstep and just go in and be open. I mean, I think the only thing I'm afraid of right now around the ways in which people talk about art is that everybody's is getting very prescriptive about what should and should not be talked about, what should and shouldn't be seen, what kind of images we have to have, or we don't have to have. And at some point, something gets lost in that, and we have to be, you know, possibly, we don't know, you know, there's all kinds of ways in which different people look at the world, and we don't have to always agree with them, but we need to be, as they should be open to hearing what we have to say, we need to be open to hearing what they have to say. If we don't like it, we don't like it. But, you know, but to stop it before it even gets started is problematic to me.
Thank you. So Joshua Christian asks, how do you all balance the grief and beauty in your poems? Is there anything you keep in mind as you draft / revise?
Again with these questions. I try to lean, and Josh knows me, so he knows how bad it's been for me. I try to lean on formal strategies, not necessarily just, you know, traditional form, but the epistle, or, you know, something that often it's something that I'm teaching to my undergraduates. Often those strategies that I'm introducing poets to are the very strategies that help me manage grief when I'm writing poems of grief. So often it's just the sort of basic things we learn in our first creative writing classes, like how to focus on that one image, how to end that poem, how to use persona to really reveal what you want to reveal about yourself, but are too afraid to reveal. That was today's lesson, by the way.
Okay, that's a good one. I don't know. I guess it's really strange. I mean, you know, I did a reading on Sunday for the Network for New York Schools Studies, and I was thinking about the ways in which the New York school is often described as being kind of emotionally distant and all this other kind of stuff. And I think emotional distance is not a bad thing. I think that I think sometimes you have to kind of step away from your experience in order to write it. I think you have to figure out, I mean, within the writing, what that is. I think some things you can't write about. I mean, you just can't do it. I mean, for whatever reason, and I don't think you have to. I think sometimes I think people are pushing themselves to like make these declarations about their emotional self in work when they need to be making their emotional declarations to themselves and deal with and grow from that, so that, and also, frankly, we need to write about other things than grief. You know, what is the joy of them? You know, the reason why people are grieving is because you lost something. And what is that loss? And when can you go back to that? What was that? What was that? What was beautiful 20 years ago or 5 minutes ago? What wasn't? How do you do that? And sometimes I think we need to ask some other kinds of questions of ourselves, like, you know, what are the sounds we really like? You know, not everything is music, but it's like when I wrote that line that said, and it's that O, precario, it's that O. I mean, and precarious sounds better in Spanish. I mean, it really does. And so there are things you just kind of learn as you're writing things. And they could be about something as horrific as the murder of this young woman, or they could be about the fact that this year Louis Warsh died and Bob Hirschhorn died and Gary Linhart died. I can go on a list of all these people who I cared about. They're not on this planet anymore, right? And so we live our lives, and our lives are about what we bring into it and who leaves out of it. And we just have to recognize that. And so I'm not sure. And also, I guess this is the other thing I'm going to say is not everything has to be balanced. Sometimes you can just be, I love the comeback poem. I love the demand of that in Allison's poem. I love that demand because everybody who's lost somebody wants them back. If they really love them, they want them back. If they didn't love him, then, that's one of the reasons why I've been writing a series of poems called it's in the persona of the devil's wife. And my favorite one, yeah, I know, I had to send you this. My favorite one is called The Devil's Wife Considers Suicide Because Homicide is Not an Option. Because you can't fucking kill the devil, right? So that's the other side of it. We need to allow ourselves some laughter and some tenderness and some joy, and that needs to come out.
Tell that to my ex-husband.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, he's no word. I'm gonna send you a copy of the poem. You will laugh. Okay.
Thank you so much for these answers. I know we've been hitting you with a lot of heavy questions, and we really appreciate your responses. So thank you. We are running out of time. We have a few more questions in the chat, so we might not be able to get to all of them. Before I ask another question for the chat, though, I wondered if the two of you had any questions that you would like to ask one another.
Not so much a question, but a recognition that Mr. Softy never dies.
That's true.
Mr. Softy never dies, because even at my advanced age, many years past being a little kid running the streets in the Bronx, I can still hear that jingle. It will drive you insane. So I will stand
and
for
Patricia's. Actually, they have a new Mr. Softy jingle, but it's equally horrifying. So, so there's a whole another generation of young people who are like going to remember these things and create horrifyingly bad horror movies about them years from now. Anyway,
it is true that it creates that thing in your brain that whenever you see an ice cream truck that you do lose your mind. I mean, I still do whenever I see an ice cream truck. It's much more rare here in the Midwest to see one, but I still lose my mind.
Okay.
I mean, I'm an adult. I can buy my own ice cream. I still don't know why it just sort of just pulls that out of me.
I think it's one of those things about it's that moment it's the Pied Piper moment.
Exactly.
And everybody knows that they can at some point be seduced in one way or another. And we do a lot of fighting against thinking about that, thinking that we are stronger than, or we can fight off. But at some point or another, something or someone or something gets your attention, and you just go for it. I think about Painkiller, and all the poems were about mad affair I had after 2000 after 9/11, and it was insane, but it was a lot of fun. I don't know if I would do it again. Well, yeah, I probably would. So, but the thing is that that's the thing about being willing to enter into life at its fullest, and then trying to use, you don't have to use the lived experience, but the lived experience needs to inform some of the ways in which one writes. Whether, how do you know that you love? How do you know that you have faith? How do you know that you want, how do you figure out how to curse somebody out? What are the things, what comes out of you? And I know that a lot of people talk about trauma all the time, but the thing is that up until the age of, 2 years old, after that, we're conscious of a great many ways in which each and every one of us are dealt with. And sometimes we are treated tenderly, and sometimes we are not. And you hope that it's more of the former than the latter. And you try to, you're in your own way. I mean, at least for me, and I think this is in Allison's work. I mean, there's this just real sense of trying to see what is good and what is right, and how to treat people, and how to demand to be treated well. And for Black women, that is a constant battle.
Yep. Cosign.
I'm not sure if I can answer any more questions. I'm like, my brain is like, yeah. And we don't even get to have drinks afterwards. This is really, that's the bad part.
That is the downside of Zoom.
That is the downside of Zoom.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for being here and for these incredible readings and amazing answers to these tough questions. And thank you to our wonderful audience as well. I hope to see many of you at our annual gala, either on Zoom on Thursday, November 4th, or in person at our watch parties at the train station on the 5th. Tickets are on sale on our website at several price points, and I'm going to add the link to the gala page on our website to the chat right now. Thank you again to everyone, and I hope you all have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's amazing.
I'm coming to Carbondale.